On the 10th of July 2008, Filipino-Canadian film critic and film professor Alexis Teoseko appeared on ANC's weekly media affairs show, Media in Focus. With his profound knowledge and eloquence, 28-year-old Alexis made a lasting impression on both the audience and the industry. Throughout the interview, Alexis showcased his deep understanding and passion for Southeast Asian cinema, particularly in the Filipino film industry. However, just a year later, tragedy struck when Alexis Teoseko and his Slovenian girlfriend, Nika Bohing, fell victim to a heinous act of violence. In the late hours of September 1, 2009, the couple returned to their residence nestled in Quezon City. As they arrived at the home, they were met with a harrowing scene that unfolded before their eyes. The house had been ransacked, and they saw three men recklessly rifling through their personal belongings. But before they could fully comprehend the gravity of the situation, they came face to face with the chilling sight of a gun pointed at them. Alexis Teoseko was born in the Philippines, but later moved with his family to Canada in 1983, even while residing abroad. His connection to his Filipino roots remained strong, and he developed a profound fascination with Philippine cinema from a young age. In his early years, he recognized the rich artistic and cultural heritage of his home country and saw the power of film as a medium for storytelling. This passion for Philippine cinema would become a driving force in his life's work. With a history spanning over a century, Philippine cinema has witnessed distinct and notable eras, often referred to as the Golden Ages. These pivotal periods include the 1930s and early 40s, marked by the establishment of major film studios. During the post-war 40s and 50s, another significant era emerged, characterized by a cinematic revival that originated beyond Manila, particularly in the Alexis, one of the three main island groups of the Philippines. During the 1970s to early 1980s, a significant wave of talented directors emerged and left their mark on the industry. Among these notable filmmakers were Mike Delian and Ishmael Bernal, who each contributed unique perspectives and styles to the cinematic landscape. Mike Delian earned a reputation for his meticulous attention to detail and his keen eye for social commentary, while Ishmael Bernal delved into themes of faith, fanaticism, and the intricacies of human nature. Alexis had a deep respect for the cinematic giants who had come before him. Rather than being intimidated, he saw their accomplishments as a foundation upon which he could build his own contributions to Philippine cinema. By his early 20s, he was a strong advocate for the cinematic works of the region and played a pivotal role in propelling the global standing of the Filipino film industry. In 2005, Alexis's significant contributions to the field were acknowledged by the Philippine Star, which named him as one of the most important young people in the Philippines today. Driven by his passion for Southeast Asian cinema, Alexis established a website called criticis.com, which became a virtual space dedicated to exploring and analyzing the diverse cinematic works of Southeast Asia. The website served as a hub for film enthusiasts. It provided a wealth of valuable content, including in-depth film reviews, compelling articles that sparked thought and discussion, and comprehensive coverage of film festivals and events throughout Southeast Asia. This platform quickly garnered attention and acclaim. In particular, it had caught the attention of Filmmaker magazine, which hailed it as arguably the most influential, intelligent blog of Southeast Asian cinema. Throughout his career, Alexis became renowned for his unwavering commitment to exposing foreign audiences to the richness of Philippine independent cinema. However, he often worked long hours as he had to conduct meticulous research and frequently collaborate with various film organizations and festivals. As a result, the path he chose did not come without its challenges and personal sacrifices. Alexis often had to separate himself from loved ones, including his partner Nika Bohing. In 2007, Alexis and Nika crossed paths for the first time. At a film festival in Rotterdam, this particular meeting occurred during a time when both of them were facing personal challenges And as Alexis himself put it, they were not in the best state of mind. At the time, Alexis was dealing with the difficulties of adapting to life in Manila without the presence of his father, who had recently passed away. He also found himself physically separated from his mother and siblings, as they were all back in Canada. Meanwhile, Nika was in the midst of finalizing an issue of a Slovenian film magazine she had been tirelessly editing for over a year. However, the dedication and hard work had taken a toll on her, leaving her physically unwell and emotionally drained. In a piece written by Tosco, he expresses his feelings about Nika. He describes how from the very first moment he saw her, there was something special about her that immediately caught his attention. It went beyond her physical beauty. What truly struck Alexis was the way she spoke, the eloquence, and the way she expressed herself. He writes, "I know sometimes you may think that it was the fact that we both worked in the same field that attracted me to you, but I must tell you that this couldn't be farther from the truth." Why? Because one of the greatest joys I believe one can feel is to share that which they find beautiful with someone who otherwise wouldn't have noticed it, and to see it appreciated. On the 30th of August 2009, Alexis organized a gathering at his house to bid farewell to his girlfriend Nika, who was scheduled to return to Slovenia that week. The gathering took place on a tranquil Sunday evening, and it didn't last very long because many guests had to work the following day. Additionally, the air conditioning in the house was either not functioning or inadequately cooling the humid night air, causing everyone to grow even more tired. Erwin Romulo, one of the people invited to the event, was one of the last few to leave. According to an article he wrote about the event, he had the opportunity to have a private conversation with Alexis. "Alexis, are you okay?" Erwin asked as he noticed Alexis with a look of concern on his face. "Yeah, I'm alright, I'm just worried she's leaving. Ever since she's moved here, I've been extremely happy, but I know that she hasn't adjusted well to living in Manila." Erwin assured him that everything would be all right. However, despite his words of encouragement, Alexis remained uncertain. 2 days later, on Tuesday, September 1st, 2009, Alexis and Nika were out for dinner with some friends. Records state that Alexis was diligent when it came to his household affairs. Alexis had employed two domestic helpers to assist with various tasks. Magdalena Patpak, one of the helpers, had been diligently serving the household for over 6 years, while 46-year-old Criselda Dayag was a recent addition to the household staff. Although Cressula had a clearance permit from the local Quezon City Police Department, she lacked the required clearance from the National Bureau of Investigation. Despite this, Alexis still chose to hire her, possibly driven by empathy or understanding. Criselda officially began working for the Alexis household on July 1st, 2009, but Alexis still had his concerns about the potential risks, and as a result instructed his other helper Magdalena to test her out and keep a close eye on her. Over the following months, nothing went missing and nothing was destroyed. Cressula had proved herself to be a valuable addition to the household. However, on this particular day, when the couple was away for dinner, Cressula approached Magdalena with something to say. "Sister, I'm just going out to the convenience store to grab something. I'll be back soon. I need to call my father too." "Okay, I'll be in the room." Around 7:45 p.m., Magdalena's attention was caught by the sound of Aster, the trusted household dog. Immediately, she found this unusual. Aster was typically familiar with her and would happily wag his tail whenever she approached. She also understood that Aster rarely barked, so if he did bark, it must have been because he sensed something out of the ordinary. Curious, she went out to the porch looking around at the garage and pasted Esther. She noticed Cressula, who was standing near the dog's enclosure. Cressula appeared to be completely absorbed in her phone, oblivious to the incessant barking of Esther. Magdalena then scanned her surroundings looking for a sign that might have prompted Esther's barking, but she found nothing, no reason really for Esther to be barking. There were no strangers or intruders. Afterwards, Magdalena returned to the bedroom and Cressula followed suit. They both sat on their beds and watched TV. However, before long, Cressula left the room, once again this time exhibiting signs of restlessness. Outside the home, Esther barked again. Immediately, Magdalena went outside once more, passing by the bench in the garage where Cressula was now seated. She then walked to the gate and opened it, allowing her to gaze out into the street. Yet, as she surveyed her surroundings, nothing appeared out of the ordinary. The familiar sight of passing cars and the intensifying noise of crickets were the only sounds echoing through the night. Satisfied that everything seemed normal, Magdalena went back inside the house and used the bathroom. As she exited the bathroom, a man with his face covered swiftly grabbed her from behind, tightly covering her mouth with his hand. In a chilling whisper, he warned her, "Don't scream, we will kill you." Another masked man walked in and tightly grasped her arm, preventing her from moving. Meanwhile, a third man, the only one whose face she would catch a glimpse of, pulled out a handgun and pointed it in her direction. As she stood there, trembling with fear, she could feel the presence of something sharp and cold pressed against her back. Magdalena was forcefully pushed back into a room, where the intruders proceeded to tightly bind her arms with rough ropes to further silence her. They forcefully placed a face towel in her mouth, followed by another towel that covered her entire face. But before her vision was obscured, she gave a desperate look to Cressula. What she saw chilled her to the core. Cressula appeared unnervingly composed, devoid of any visible emotion. She was seated on her own bed, merely observing the scene unfold before her eyes. In the suffocating darkness, she heard the sound of adhesive tape being unspooled, followed by the unsettling sensation of the towel being tightly secured around her head. As she lay there, hog-tied and bound, Magdalena's ears captured the sound of the television being switched on in the main kitchen, a space where Alexis and Nia typically use their laptops. She recognized the sound of the daily news being aired, but a pungent scent of cigarette smoke permeated the air, which indicated that the intruders were still around. As her mind raced with fear, she realized that the men weren't simply there to ransack the house. They were waiting for something. In the midst of her agony, wide tears welled up in Magdalena's eyes. As she began to whisper prayers to herself, desperately hoping for some kind of divine intervention. 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. Alexis and Nika had returned home. It's now past midnight, and Magdalena could hear the sound of police officers entering the room. "Ma'am, are you okay? Are you hurt?" an officer said as he untied her. Immediately, Magdalena rushes into the kitchen and lets out a deafening scream. The scene that greets her eyes is horrifying. The once pristine floor is now marred by a chilling pool of blood, and crimson red footprints are left all around the house. With tears streaming from her eyes, she races to the garage and discovers the car missing. Magdalena's mind is consumed by one burning question: where the hell is Cressula? In the aftermath of the heinous act that claimed the lives of Alexis and Nika, Magdalena was escorted from the scene. Recognizing the impact of the harrowing event, authorities had her relocated to a secure location. But as she left the home, the scene outside became a flurry of activity, intensified by the arrival of television cameras from news channels such as ABS, CBN, and GMA News. In the midst of the growing crowd, a collective of young faces emerged, standing shoulder to shoulder outside the house. These were the filmmakers, writers, and college friends whom Alexis had introduced to Magdalena over the years. Their youthful energy mingled with a profound sense of grief, forming a bond that transcended mere friendship. Magdalena's voice, raw with anguish and fueled by a desperate plea for justice, reverberated through the air. In a spontaneous outpouring of emotion, she unleashed a heartfelt prayer. God doesn't sleep, he knows exactly what he's doing. God doesn't sleep. A sense of urgency had now gripped the neighborhood. As a fleet of police vehicles were parked outside on 39 Times Street, immediately the police had their suspicions pointing to an inside job that had unraveled within the walls of the couple's abode. Initially, one would assume that it had to be Cressula when we consider the circumstances surrounding the break-in at the house. Her behavior before the intrusion was unusual and highly suspicious. First, she would aimlessly wander in and out of the house, her attention constantly fixated on her phone. One could even say that she was communicating with the intruders themselves. However, it was when the intruders invaded the house and started restraining Magdalena that Cressula's reaction truly raised doubts and made us deeply question her involvement. Instead of showing the expected emotions of shock, fear, or panic that anyone would naturally feel in such a terrifying situation, she remained seated next to Magdalena, observing the events unfold with an unsettling calmness. Her composed demeanor in the face of danger have been a clear indication that she must have had some level of involvement in the crime. However, at the time, Cressula was not immediately singled out as the primary suspect in the police's investigation. Instead, they turned their attention to a man named Danilo Homak. His full name is Danilo D. Homak Sr., and he grew up as the son of a farmer. As a child, he attended elementary school, but never pursued any further education beyond that. In 1989, a new chapter unfolded in his life as he sought a career at Agila Gas, a notable fuel trucking business under the ownership of a man named Leonardo Tioseco, the father of Alexis Tioseco. Following the unfortunate demise of Leonardo in 2007, the reins of the business were passed on to his son, Alexis, who assumed control of the company. The exact nature of the relationship between Danilo and Leonardo remains uncertain, but one would assume they shared a close bond. Records indicate that Danilo had been acquainted with Alexis since he was 15 years old, suggesting a long-standing connection between the two individuals. But on the afternoon of September 5, 2009, at approximately 4 o'clock, Danilo Homak was arrested for the double murder of Alexis and his girlfriend Nika. This might come as a surprise to many. After all, how could the police arrest someone so close to the Tioseco family? He mumbles when he speaks. His fingers would often pluck at loose threads on his pants, and he always seemed to have a perpetual nervous energy that surrounds him. Given these observations, one might wonder how the police even came to suspect Danilo in the first place. What prompted them to focus their attention on someone so closely connected to the Tioseco family? Well, it turns out that Alexis had personally hired Danilo as the family's private chauffeur. And what really added a perplexing twist to the narrative was the peculiar fact that he had abruptly abandoned the car a day before the killings took place. This raised suspicions and led investigators to delve deeper into Danilo's involvement. Inside the confines of Camp Carangal, the authorities might have probed Danilo furiously. "We know it was you, Danilo, but where are your associates?" Danilo was quiet. "I want you to take a look at this sketch. Tell me if it looks familiar." The officers presented Danilo with a cartographic sketch based on a description provided by a witness. "Tell me, Danilo, does this resemble you?" With a hint of hesitation, Danilo said it did, but only a little. "The cheeks are bigger and the hair is shorter than mine, but other than that, it looks like me. You see, I knew it. You even admitted it." The officers exclaimed triumphantly. In their eyes, Danilo's acknowledgement served as a self-incriminating affirmation, reinforcing the connection between him and the depicted figure in the sketch. At first, Danilo vehemently refuted the accusations leveled against him. He says that it was impossible for him to have committed the murders as he was in Metro Manila transporting gas at the time. However, the authorities confronted him with a menacing question. "Danilo, what if we were to find your fingerprints inside the car?" The implications were clear. The mere possibility of his fingerprints being found would be irrefutable evidence against him, and he would have to spend the rest of his life in prison. But it still didn't make any sense. Why would Danilo Homak kill Alexis? Records clearly state that Alexis was a great boss. He demonstrated kindness and understanding in their interactions. For example, when Danilo requested a loan for his son's college tuition, Alexis declined but instead offered to give him the money as a gift. He also showed concern for Danilo's children and offered to buy one of them a new bike as a reward for his good grades in school. So if Alexis was such a great boss, why would he want to kill him? The case of Danilo Homic is rife with swirling conspiracy theories. Some say that he may have been nothing more than a convenient scapegoat, and that there are even more influential figures lurking behind the scenes, orchestrating the crime. To understand this perspective, it's crucial to delve into the life and work of Alexis, where a prevailing belief exists that there is more to the story than meets the eye. Alexis himself was a fervent advocate and pivotal force within the realm of independent Philippine films. At the time of his death, he held the esteemed position of a film professor at the University of Asia and the Pacific. He was a respected contributing writer for numerous publications, both domestically and internationally. Notably, he was on the cusp of launching a regular column in the Philippines Free Press, a highly regarded weekly news magazine. Despite being recognized as one of the leading Filipino film critics of his time, he remained humble and unassuming, brushing off such accolades. However, not everyone in the industry shared the same perspective on his viewpoints. These details fuel speculations among Alexis's acquaintances who can't help but draw connections between his influential presence in the film industry and the events that transpired. According to Cork Henners, a film director and a close friend of Alexis, Alexis possessed a deep passion for delving into the various aspects of cinema and was never afraid to challenge established norms to convey his message. Henners says he was a very funny guy and always joking around. Although he was young, he had a good working relationship with many directors in the industry, but he also had brashness. He was vocal against the movie studios and complained about how stagnant the Philippine cinema had become. This brashness, as Henners described it, was exhibited by Alexis in his unwavering commitment to instigate change within the Metro Manila Film Festival. Recognizing the need for reforms, he drafted a comprehensive position paper, fearlessly voicing out his concerns and even proposing ideas to improve the event. However, he never received a reply or saw any changes made by the organizers. While it might be the case that Alexis was merely caught in the unfortunate circumstances of a robbery, an alternative and perhaps more plausible scenario emerges, one in which someone held deep-seated animosity towards him. This animosity could have stemmed from his relentless efforts to disrupt and challenge the established norms of the Philippine cinema industry, thereby unsettling those with vested interests. In this scenario, the motive to eliminate him becomes more than a random act of violence. It could be a calculated intent to silence his influential voice and extinguish the fire he had ignited within the industry. In 2010, an important development took place in the case, when a resolution was issued and signed by Assistant City Prosecutor Ray Gilbert Espinoza. This resolution cleared Danilo Homic of all charges, as the city prosecutor's office found insufficient evidence to establish probable cause against him. Adding weight to Homac's defense, Magdalena Patbat, the only witness during the crime, provided a sworn affidavit affirming that Danilo was not involved in the robbery and murder of Alexis and his girlfriend. With Danilo Homic cleared of charges and declared a free man, the focus of attention now turns to Cressila Daag, the former housemaid of the Alexis household. They believe that she played a crucial role in the crime, not only opening the gates for the intruders to enter, but even orchestrating the entire sequence of events. It was discovered that a few hours following the tragic incident, Cressila had sent a text message to an individual connected to the Alexis family office. The message says that's why Alexis was killed, because he fought. On February 25, 2016, almost 6 years after a warrant was issued for arrest, the long arm of the law finally caught up with Cressila. She was taken into custody by the authorities in Angeles City, a town nestled in the province of Pampanga. Coincidentally, this location was in close proximity to the cemetery where Alexis was laid to rest. On May 4th, Cressula was finally brought before the Quezon City Regional Trial Court. The court, after carefully reviewing the evidence presented, reached a verdict of guilty beyond reasonable doubt for the crime of robbery with homicide. In his ruling, the judge says, under the circumstances, it is believed that she was not innocent and a victim of the assailants, as she claimed to be, without her active involvement from the very moment that she opened the door of the house and let the assailants in, up to the second that she helped in the escape of the assailants, and to the time that she went with the assailants voluntarily. The crime would not have been committed and consummated. Cressula was sentenced to 40 years in prison and ordered to pay 350,000 Philippine pesos to each of the heirs of Alexis and Nika. That's equivalent to approximately $6,728. By 2018, it became evident that the gears of justice were primarily in motion for Cressula. As for the three mysterious men that had entered the house, two of them continued to elude capture, and only one among them had been definitively identified. Erwin, a cherished confidant of Alexis, poured his emotions into a heart-wrenching essay dedicated to the memory of his dear friend. He expressed the pain he felt following the loss of his close friend, as well as the anger and frustration that he experienced during the arduous pursuit for justice. In the closing passages, he writes, "The last thing I wanted to do when I was asked to write this was to remember their deaths, but if anything, I felt that it had to be remembered." That's all for today. Thanks for watching.